Hi, this is Brian with Prophetless Medium Post. Today we're going to take a look at one way we can use a single tracker to create a 3D object track inside of Syntheyes. This could be really useful in situations where you can't get enough 3D tracks or you can't get enough tracks on an object, and we can use it in a number of different ways. But for this example, we're going to be able to track this car and actually make a 3D path that we can use for either replacing it with an actual 3D model or maybe a particle system or something like that. So the first thing we're going to need to do is track this shot. So I'm going to go over to the features panel instead of tracking it manually, and I'm going to blip all frames. Once that's done, I'm going to hit peel all, and then I'm going to head over to the solver. And let's see, it looks like we got plenty of points. So I'm going to leave it at automatic. We know that it's moving upwards. Right, it's going upwards, and there's definitely a decent amount of lens distortion, so I'm going to have the solver calculate the distortion, and let's just hit go. That was pretty quick, and we got an error of 0.32, which is actually really good, and that looks like a pretty solid track. Let me see what the quad view looks like. Okay, so everything's looking pretty good, except we want the camera to look correct. From our top view, we should see the entire ground plane. So let's set up a coordinate system. So I'm looking for the right coordinates to be able to put on the ground. So I'm going to hit the 3-point coordinate system. I'm going to use this as an origin. Now I don't really have one for the x-axis, so I could use, if I could click this one more time and go front to back, and I'm going to go to this one, which will be the z, and then this one right here on the road, and maybe that'll do the trick. Let's go to the quad view. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see if we can find a couple more on the ground down here just to make sure that this is straight. So I'm going to go to the camera view and see if we can find any down in this end of the shot that might be on the ground. Okay, these right here look like they are. So I'm going to click this one, shift click this one. That one could be, and that definitely is. So I'll grab those 4 trackers, and in the coordinates panel, come over here to the side and let's put these on the floor. Go back to the solver, hit refine, press OK. Okay, and that looks a little bit better. So if I command Z, you can see the difference. Kind of straighten it out. Okay, so this should help with what we're going to do next. So I'm going to go back to the camera view, and now the next thing we're going to need to do is track this car. So we can go over to the tracker, and let's add a track. I'm going to try to track the top of the car, and this might be a little tricky because the car turns. So to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to turn on the key smooth to like 10, the keys to 10, track, and go up to the track menu, turn on stop on auto key and pre-roll by key smooth. Turn those both on if they're not already on, and that way we can do, what we can do is you hit the space bar and it'll stop at 10, and then we can adjust it, and then it's going to go back to our last keyframe and retrack and come through. So that way we can do any kind of adjustments that we might need to do. That looks like it's off a little bit. And you can use the A and F keys to kind of check our track. I'm using the A and F keys to kind of jump back and forth to see how the keyframes look. Okay, so we have a decent 2D track. Let's go to the quad view, and now we're going to put down the plane for the road, and we're going to project that 2D tracker onto the road to create a 3D object. Let's go over to the 3D panel, and we need a plane, so let's go to plane. And all we need to do is make sure that this plane covers the entire movement of the car. Let's fit this to view, and just make sure that the tracker, yep, plenty of room. Okay, so once the plane is in the 3D scene, we're going to use a script to do this. So let's turn that off. Select our tracker, and then we're going to go up to the script menu, come down to the bottom. There's a tracker menu here, and as you can see, there's a whole bunch in here to check out. But the one we're looking for is project tracker to new moving object. Click open that. There's quite a few options. For this one in particular, we're going to use a long path and entire range, or you can use playback range. But these other options here also be useful depending on your situation. Let's just press OK. And once I do that, you'll see we have now a path, and it's a 3D object. And if we come up to active host, you can see now we have a 3D object. So the nice thing about this is that there is actually a heading. So when we place something in here, it's going to be able to have the turn too, which is pretty amazing for just a single tracker. Okay, so let's make sure we're in our object mode, and then we're just going to add in a model just to check it. So I'm going to go to box and zoom in here. If the object center is kind of in the way, what you can do, one way you can do this is go to perspective, turn on your view in the toolbar, turn on the view toolbar, and go to perspective view settings. This is our object track, and you can go object size and just bring that down. You bring it down really small, press OK, and that's going to affect not only the perspective view, but the regular camera view. So now you can see it's very small. Anyway, we can go to the quad, and let's create a box. So I'm going to create, not really sure what the size is going to be, something like that. I'm going to zoom right in. And let's turn this, there's too many segments, so let's bring that down. If you click on the number here, you can change the number of segments. So something like that should be easy to work with. And let's zoom in here and see what we get. Okay, so I'm going to move this around, try to get it kind of centered, something like that. And then we can probably scale it down just a little bit. Yeah, something like that. I mean, you get the idea. And so now let's just look in the camera view, and let's zoom that to fit, and just press play and see what we get. So now we have this 3D object track going through our scene. If we look in the quad view, you can see we have a nice 3D object track. Oops, you can't see it when you don't select it. And it looks pretty good. You know, and it's nice to be able to actually have a 3D object track with the heading for something like this. So that's just kind of a quick tip on how you can use Syntheyes to do this. There's a lot of uses for this kind of technique. And if you go onto the Syntheyes main site, there's some other similar types of techniques like this that are pretty useful. Yeah, if you have any questions or problems, let me know in the comments, and I'll get back to you when I can. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.